Okay. Well, today our subject is verse 11 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. But before we start on verse 11 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, since today is Deepam, I thought it would be nice to start with the verse that Bhagavan wrote 86 years ago on Deepam Day, explaining the significance of seeing Deepam, Deepadashana Tattvam. In this verse, this is a particularly nice verse because while explaining the significance, Bhagavan actually is very, very clearly explaining the core of his teachings and what is the practice. So in this verse he says, Itanuveinanam enumatiye nitap buddhi ideyate porandiyaha nokal aduvidamai ahachudakan gevu Madhiyanam anamalai chudakan meye. The meaning of this is Itanuveinanam, this body alone is I. Enum matiye nitap, giving up or separating ourselves from this this mati, that can mean the mind or the awareness, I am this body, which is, as Bhagavan explained so many times, the ego is nothing but the false awareness, I am this body. So giving this up, and then buddhi ideyate porandi, that means the mind abiding or being fixed or being firmly fixed in the heart, and then he gives the means. Ahanokal. Ahanokal literally means by looking at, it can either mean looking within, because aha can mean within, it can also mean looking at I. By looking within or by looking at I, that is by self-attentiveness, fixing the mind in the heart, or the mind being fixed in the heart, or mind abiding in the heart by self-attentiveness, thereby giving up the false awareness, I am this body. But these are all adverbial clauses. The main clause is, or the main subject is, aduvita mame ahachudakange. That means seeing the inner light of a light, the real inner light of a light of the real I, which is Advaita, the non-dual, so the non-dual light of the real I. That means our real self-awareness. That is the subject of the sentence. So seeing that by implication, as a result of fixing the mind in the heart by self-attentiveness, by looking at I, and thereby giving up the false awareness, the ego, I am this body. Madhyanam anamalai. Anamalai, which is called the center of the world. Chudakan meye. That is the truth or the significance of seeing the light on Anamalai, which is called the center of the world. Even this clause, which is called the center of the Bhumadi Enum, which is called the center of the world, even that has a very deep significance, because our whole experience of whatever world we may experience ourselves in, whether this world or in any other dream, whatever world we experience ourselves in, the center of the world is ourself. The whole world. Now we take ourselves to be the body. So when we talk about here, that means the point where the body is. When we talk about now, it's the point where here is the point in space where the body is. Now is the point in time where the body is there. So that is which body? The body which I take to be myself. So what is actually the center, though I as this ego identified with this body seem to be the center of the world, what is the center of this ego is the I. What is real in the ego is only I. The body is an adjunct that comes and goes. This body we experience as I in the waking state. In dream we experience some other body as I. In sleep we experience no body as I. So whatever body we experience as I is only an adjunct, something added to us. So the essence of the ego, the center of the ego, is the real I, what we actually are. So the pure self-awareness. So since this ego always experiences itself as the central point in space and in time, the point here and now, that is, in that sense, the ego is the center of the world, and the center of the ego is the real I, which is an aڻḍṛi. So there's so much deep meaning packed into this verse, in which Bhagavan is explaining the meaning of seeing Deepam. So this is, particularly on this day, this is a very important verse to remember, because this is the core of Bhagavan's teaching. The whole of Bhagavan's teaching is, and what Bhagavan's teaching is, what is the, Bhagavan has diagnosed, what is the root problem that we all face? It is this ego. And the ego is that false awareness that experiences, that adjunct-bound awareness that experiences itself, that is aware of itself as this body alone is I. So that has to be given up. How to give it up? By fixing the mind in the heart by looking at I, by self-attentiveness. And thereby we will see the light of the real I, that is seeing Deepam. So this is a very, very beautiful and significant verse, and an important verse to remember particularly today. So now coming to our main subject, verse 11 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. This is, all the verses there's a connection between all the verses, that is that each verse is leading in a logical sequence. Bhagavan is a logical and very systematic way Bhagavan is dealing with the subject. For example, in the first verse, he talks about because we see the world. What we can infer from the fact that we see the world, we can infer that there is one original thing that has a power to become many. This is not the only possible inference, but Bhagavan says this is the best inference. And he says everything that is experienced, the picture of names and forms, the one who sees it, the screen on which it's seen, and the light by which it's seen, all these are that one thing. Then in verses 2 and 3, he gives us a warning. What he's teaching us in Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, it is for one purpose and one purpose alone, in order for us to get rid of the ego, which is the root of all the problem. So Bhagavan warns us, even if we accept all that he says in Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, the purpose of accepting it is to turn our attention within and in order to eradicate the ego. It is not to arise as an ego and argue with others. So in verse 2 he says, each religion first accepts three fundamentals, world, soul and God. Contending that one fundamental standard, these three fundamentals, or three fundamentals are always three fundamentals, is possible only so long as the ego exists. This applies to any argument. However strongly we believe in Bhagavan's teaching, the purpose is not to argue with others. Everyone believes according to their level of spiritual development, their level of maturity. People will have so many different beliefs. There's never going to be a day when everyone's going to accept Bhagavan's teachings. If we accept Bhagavan's teachings, that's enough. We have to imbibe his teachings, put them into practice, turn within. Therefore he concludes that verse by saying, by destroying the ego, standing in the real state of oneself is best. And he continues the warning in the next verse. What is the use of disputing? The world is real, it's an unreal appearance. The world is sentient, it's not. The world is happiness, it's not. Leaving all such arguments and all thought about the world, investigating oneself, and thereby separating oneself from all these disputes, that state in which I, the ego, has thereby perished is agreeable to all. So in these two verses, Bhagavan very clearly emphasizes what is the purpose of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. Then in verse 4, he begins to develop the subject that he took up in verse 1, which is because we see the world. So he says, if oneself is a world, if oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. So the world appears as a myriad names and forms because we take ourselves as a form. If oneself is not a form, who can see their forms and how to do so? So can what is seen be otherwise than the nature of the eye? So if we take ourselves to be a form, everything will appear as form. But he said the real I is oneself. That means one's real nature. That is the infinite I. I there means I as in the organ of sight. And then he continues the same subject. He says, what is the body? What is the form he's referring to there? It's a body. But that body is not just a physical form. It's a form of 5 sheaths. So all the 5 sheaths are included in the term body. Without a body consisting of these 5 sheaths, the 5 sheaths means the physical form, the life, the mind, the intellect, and the basic self-ignorance. Without such a body, is there a world? Without a body, has anyone seen a world? And then in the next verse he says, what is this world? It's simply a form of 5 types of sensory perception, 5 kinds of sense data, we can say, sensory impressions. Apart from sights, sounds, tastes, smells, and tactile sensations, where is any world? There's no world apart from these things. So he says, the world is not anything but these 5 kinds of sense impressions. These 5 kinds of sense impressions are relative. Each is applicable to one of the 5 sense organs. Since the mind alone perceives the world by way of the 5 sense organs, is there any world besides the mind? And then in verse 7, so first he says there's no world apart from the body, and there's no world apart from the mind. Then in 7 he wraps up the whole subject by saying, though the world and the mind rise and subside simultaneously, the world shines only by the mind. But then, he started off by saying, because we see the world. And from the fact that we see the world, he inferred the existence, he said that we can infer the existence of one model, one fundamental thing, one primary thing, which has a power to appear as many. So in verse 7 he says, what is that one fundamental thing? He doesn't use the word model here, he uses the word porol, which means the real substance in this context. He said, only that which shines without appearing and disappearing, as the base for the appearing and disappearing of the world and mind is porol, which is pundram. Pundram means the infinite whole. It means, it's a Tamil form of the word, Sanskrit word purna, which means whole or full. So it means everything, the totality of all that is. So what is the real substance? We see all these names and forms, like so many ornaments made of gold. But what actually are all those ornaments made of gold? They're nothing but gold. The forms they take are unreal because they come and they go. You can melt down a ring and make it into a necklace or into a gold brick or whatever. The form is not what is real, because forms are transient. What is real is the gold, the substance. That's as far as that analogy is concerned, but I mean that's an analogy for the sense in which one uses the word porol here. This is the real substance. And in the first verse, he says everything, the picture of names and forms, the seer, the screen and the light, all are taṇṇai. That means that fundamental, that one fundamental, which is oneself, which is our real nature. And here he says it, he refers to it as poro, the substance. So, but when Muruganar asked Bhagavan to compose Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, he made a very, very simple request, which he expressed in the prefatory verse, the Payaram verse, but he wrote for it afterwards. That is, he asked, Meyin ilbum adumevum kiranam. That is, he was asking Bhagavan, reveal to us Meyin ilbum, the nature of reality, adumevum kiranam, the means to attain or to experience it. So, in verse 7, he explains what is the nature of reality. It is only that which shines without appearing and disappearing, as the base of a ādhāra means, actually he uses the Tamil word idam there, but it means in this context the same as ādhāra, which means, often it's translated as base, but it also means a container, that in which everything is contained. That is poro. So it doesn't appear or disappear, that means it's permanently, it's what we constantly experience. In other words, it's our own fundamental self-awareness, but it is the base and the location or the place for the appearance of and disappearance of the world and the mind. So he's now, so here he explains Meyin ilbu, the nature of reality. But then the main purpose of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, we don't just want to know theoretically what is the nature of reality, we want to actually experience it. So in verse 8, Bhagavan talks about how to see this poro, this real substance. People generally conceive of that reality as God, and they have a mental image of God as some name or form. Even if they've got an idea that God is nameless and formless, the idea that they have of God is itself a form. So Bhagavan starts by saying, whoever worships in whatever form, giving whatever name, that is the way to see that poro in name and form. That is, though the poro is nameless and formless, if we conceive it, if we conceive of it as a name and form and worship that name and form with the love that we are worshipping that reality, that is the way to see it in name and form. However, knowing the reality of oneself and thereby subsiding in and becoming one with the reality of that true substance alone is seeing in reality. So Bhagavan here says, what is the real seeing? It's not seeing God in name and form. In a later verse, he says that seeing God in name and form is seeing a manomayamam karchi, that is a mental image, a mental form, a mental perception. So that is not the real seeing. Real seeing is only when one sees oneself and sees the reality of oneself. Oneself here means ego. The reality of oneself is the poro. So when one sees the reality of oneself, as this ego we subside and become one with that reality, and that alone is seeing in reality, Bhagavan says. So worshipping in name and form is the way to see in name and form. Knowing one's own reality is the way to see it in reality. So we have a choice. Do we want to see it in name and form, or do we want to see it in reality? Seeing in name and form is not the real seeing. So from verse 8 he's talking about seeing, how to see. But then Bhagavan begins to analyze what is the nature of seeing. Seeing here means being aware of or knowing. So in verse 9 he talks about dyads and triads. Dyads are pairs of opposites: knowledge, ignorance, happiness, unhappiness, existence, non-existence, likes, dislikes, desires, fears, any pair of opposites, they're all included in dyads and triads, but the most fundamental of all the dyads is knowledge and ignorance. And triads. Triads means the three factors of when we know things other than ourselves. We've got ourself as the knower, the thing we know is what is known, and there's our knowing of it. So these are three things: the knower, the knowing, and the known. So Bhagavan said these dyads and triads, they exist by clinging only to one thing. What is the one thing they cling to? In whose view do dyads exist? In whose view is there awareness of things other than ourselves? It's only in the view of the ego. So the one thing that they cling to or depend on is the ego. And then he says, if one looks within the mind to see what that one is, so instead of seeing what is seen, if we try to see what is seeing, in other words, we try to see the seer, ourself, this ego, they will cease to exist. Why will they cease to exist? Because, as he explains later, they, for example, in verse 14, he said, if the first person exists, second and third persons will exist. But if we investigate the truth of the first person, the first person will cease to exist, and along with it, the second and third persons will cease to exist. The same is implied here. If we look within the mind to see what is the one which supports this knowledge and this dyads and triads, in other words, the ego, that one, being the ego, is unreal. When we see the reality of ourself, the ego will cease to exist, and when it ceases to exist, in the absence of the ego, where are dyads and triads? In sleep, we are aware of ourselves, but we're not aware of ourselves as the ego. Because we're not aware of ourselves as the ego, there are no dyads and triads, there's nothing. We're not aware of anything, we are just simply aware. Just being aware, that is our real nature. So it's only when the ego rises that dyads and triads seem to exist. And then he ends that verse by saying, only those who have seen the reality. That means only those who have seen this, the cessation of the ego and all its dyads and triads, have seen the reality. They will not be confused. Because they have seen what is real, they will never again see what is unreal, so they will never again be confused. That's the implication. Then in verse 10, which was the verse we discussed last month, he begins to talk, he goes still deeper into this subject of, because as I said, from verse 8, Bhagavan is talking about seeing or knowing. So in verse 9 he talks about the knowing of things other than ourselves, which consists of a dyad, the knower, the known, and the knowing. But from verse 10, 11, 12 and 13, he goes still deeper into the subject. He first says, without ignorance, knowledge does not exist. Without knowledge, ignorance does not exist. That is, knowledge and ignorance are a pair they're a dyad, a pair of opposites. Only when we come to know something, we come to know, but we were previously ignorant of it. So since nothing exists apart from our awareness of it, according to the principles of Bhagavan's teaching, it's only our ignorance of something, our prior ignorance of something, comes into existence at the same time as our knowledge of that thing, because that thing didn't exist either for us to know or not know before we came to know it. So without ignorance, knowledge doesn't exist. Without knowledge, ignorance doesn't exist. In sleep, we are not ignorant of anything because there's nothing for us to be ignorant of. And there's nothing for us to be ignorant of because we don't know anything. So it's only when we know something, but either we know that our knowledge of it is limited. In other words, we know that we sometimes we say, I don't know much about that subject. We know there is a subject. We know there's a subject, say, let's say medieval Indian history. But we don't know much about it. We know there was before the Mughals came to India, there was some history, but we've got very little knowledge about it. We may know a little bit about the Gupta dynasty or this or that, and the Chola dynasty in the south, but we don't really know much about it, because we've not studied the subject. So because we've got a little knowledge about it, we know that we're ignorant of the rest of it. So also scientists are very aware of their ignorance. The more they know, the more they know what they don't know. It's like that with any subject. So knowledge and ignorance are inseparable. It's basically Bhagavan is saying there. But to whom are that knowledge and ignorance? They're only for the ego. So Bhagavan says, only the knowledge that knows oneself, who is the first to appear, who is the first, that means the first to appear, by investigating to whom are that knowledge and ignorance is knowledge. Here knowledge, the word Bhagavan uses is aṟivu, which means, though one meaning of it is aṟivu, it has a much broader and deeper meaning than the English word knowledge, because it not only means knowledge, it also means awareness. So Bhagavan is using it both in the sense of knowledge and in the sense of awareness. So if we translate it as awareness, what Bhagavan is saying here, only the awareness that is aware of oneself, that means aware of the reality of oneself being the ego, only the knowledge that knows the reality of the ego, which is what knows, which is that to which knowledge and ignorance occur, is knowledge. That is, the ego is, the knowledge and ignorance appear only to the ego. When the ego rises in waking and sleep, all its knowledge and ignorance waking and dream, all its knowledge and ignorance comes into existence. When the ego subsides in sleep, there's no ego, and hence there's no knowledge or ignorance. But what remains, that is the real awareness. So only the awareness that knows oneself is real awareness, is the implication of verse 10. So now we come to verse 11, which is the verse we are to discuss this time. The first sentence, in the first sentence, Bhagavan says, aṟivuṛum taṉṇai aṟiyādu, ayalai aṟivadu, daṛiyāmai aṉḍṛi aṟivō. This is a rhetorical question, but the syntax of it in Tamil is difficult to convey in English, because if it were the implication of this rhetorical question, ayalai aṟivadu, daṛiyāmai aṉḍṛi aṛivō, the implication of this is, ayalai means other things, anything other than ourselves. So knowing things other than ourselves is ignorance, aṉḍṛi aṛivō. If it were put as a positive sentence, well, let's say the implication of this rhetorical question is that knowing other things is not knowledge but only ignorance. But in English we can't say, aṉḍṛi there represents only this, is not this, only that. That's what's implied by the aṉḍṛi here, which we can say in a positive sentence in English. Knowing other things is not knowledge but only ignorance. But in a question, in a rhetorical, we can't form that into a rhetorical question. But that's possible in Tamil. So in English, for simplifying the translation, it's easier to split it as two things. Knowing other things is ignorance. Besides that, can it be knowledge? That's the only way of making it, forming it as a question in English. But the main subject is knowing other things, ayalai aṛivadu, and that is ignorance, not knowledge. But he also gives a an adverbial clause there, aṟivuṛum taṉṇai aṟiyādu, without knowing oneself who knows. The sentence, even without this, the sentence would still stand. I mean, ayalai, aṟivu, aṟiyāmai is a basic principle of Bhagavan's teaching. Knowing anything other than ourselves is ignorance, not knowledge. But he added this there just to emphasize the fact, when do we know things other than ourselves? Only when we don't know ourselves. If we know ourselves, there's nothing else to be known. As he says in verse 12, in the verse we'll be dealing with next month, and also in verse, I think 27 of I think it's 27 of Padacchēdam, in which he says that there's nothing else to be known. So because we don't know what we are so far, we are aware of other things. That, Bhagavan says, that is ignorance. It is not knowledge. In the Kalivemba version, Bhagavan extended the first phrase. The first phrase is aṛivuṛun taṉṇai. That means oneself who knows. To that, Bhagavan added another word, aṛiva, aṛivuṛun taṉṇai. Aṛiva is, for those of you who know Tamil, it's an archaic form of the neuter third person plural participial noun, that aṛivavayaṛ. In ancient Tamil, aṛivavayaṛ was simply aṛiva. And so this more archaic form of the word is often used by Bhagavan and Murugan and such poets in Tamil, because it's more meaning compact in smaller space by using the briefer form. So aṛiva means aṛivavayaṛ, which means those that are known, and implies those things that are known. So there he says, oneself who knows those things that are known. Since he says in this sentence, ayalai, aṛivadu, aṟiyāmai, knowing other things is ignorance, he implies that whatever knows other things is ignorant. If knowing other things is ignorant, whatever knows other things must be ignorant. So the clear implication is that what knows other things is not ourself as we actually are, but only ourself as this ego. So here, taṉṇai, oneself, refers to the ego. So the ego is what knows things other than itself. What knows, aṛiva means things that are known, which is what he refers to also in this sentence, ayalai, other things. So that's the ego Bhagavan is referring to there. So when he says not knowing oneself, it means not knowing the truth about oneself, not knowing the reality of oneself, this ego. When Bhagavan made Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu into a Kalivemba form, he emphasized this point in several places, that what knows things other than itself is the ego. Here the extension he added to this, the first sentence of this verse, is aṛiva, which means those things that are known. Likewise, in verse 20, he added the word sabhavai, which in that context means those things that appear. And in verse 22, he added the relative clause, edayum kāna, which sees everything. Sabhavai, he added to kānam taṉṇai, So oneself who sees those things that appear. And ebeyam karnam, he added to mati, which means mind. Ebeyam karnam mati. So the mind which sees everything. So in all these three cases, what he implies is that what sees or is aware of everything other than ourselves is only ourself as this ego or mind. Then in the next verse, in the next sentence, there are just two sentences in this verse. The next sentence he says, when one aṟivu-uṟum, ayaṟku here, ayaṟku is the dative form of ayal, it means the other. In this context, he's been talking about this dyad of knowledge and ignorance. In this context, ayal refers to the ignorance. So he said, aṟivu, ayaṟku, ādhāra, taṉṇai, aṛiyā. When one knows oneself, the support or base or container for knowledge and ignorance, knowledge and the other, between knowledge and ignorance, aṟivu, aṟiyāmai, aṛum. Knowledge and ignorance will cease. Why will they cease? Because they exist only in the view of the ego. When we know when we know ourselves, that when we know the reality of ourselves, this ego, which is the base for knowledge, the reality, when we know the reality of ourselves, we will no longer seem to be this ego. So the ego will cease to exist, and along with it, all its knowledge and ignorance will cease to exist. So the implication of this sentence is, when one knows the reality of oneself, the ego, the ādhāra, which is the ādhāra or support, foundational container for knowledge and ignorance, knowledge and ignorance of everything else will cease. Because the reality of the ego is just pure self-awareness. So when one knows oneself with pure self-awareness, the ego will no longer seem to exist, and hence all its knowledge and ignorance will cease to exist along with it. In the Kalivemba version, Bhagavan intensified the final verb. The final verb is arum, which means will cease. He appended the intensifying suffix a. So arum became arumai, which means will definitely cease or will actually cease. So he's just adding a little bit more emphasis there to that final word. Final verb, so emphasizing that they will definitely cease. No knowledge and ignorance can survive the destruction of the ego. They don't even survive in sleep. So how can they survive in the absence of the ego? So I think I've talked for quite a long time today. I hope what I was saying was clear and that everyone was able to follow it. But the thing is, in Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, there's so many. In Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, it's a very coherent exposition of the nature of reality and the means of attaining it. Coherent means what holds together. So there's so many connections. Every verse, there's so many connections between verses in different parts of the text. So we have to understand each verse individually, and we also have to understand it in the context of the whole work. Because if we take the verses out of context, many of the verses can be very easily misinterpreted. In a lot of translations, Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu has been misinterpreted because people aren't making the connection between the verses, and so they're not understanding like Bhagavan often uses the word taṉ or its accusative form taṉṇai, which means oneself. In some places he uses that word to refer to what we actually are, our real nature, atma-swarupa. In many cases he uses it to refer to the ego. So we have to understand from the context which it refers to in which case. But when we have a coherent understanding of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu as a whole, we will understand that in many, many cases he's using it to refer to the ego, but in various English translations it's been translated as the self, which is completely missing the point of what Bhagavan is talking about. According to Bhagavan, the whole problem is the ego. The ego is the base for knowledge and ignorance. The ego is, when the ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. When the ego is not, everything is not. So Bhagavan is constantly emphasizing the root problem is the ego. The only real solution to all our problems is to get rid of the ego. If you cut the root, the whole tree dies. So Bhagavan, whether it's in Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu or whether it's in aṟivuṛum, the very first verse of aṟivuṛum, what Bhagavan says, Arunachala mena ahamene pava ahate verarupaya arunachala. You root out the ego. So the whole aim of why Arunachala appeared as first as a column of fire between Brahma and Vishnu, and later took the form of a hill. To teach, it was only to teach the annihilation of the ego. That is what, and the same Arunachala has appeared in human form as Bhagavan to teach us the same thing. So this is what Bhagavan teaching is all about. It's all about this root problem of the ego. In older Advaita texts, they say the root problem is avidya, ignorance. But for whom is ignorance? The exponents of Advaita philosophy after Shankara, they got themselves in they actually divided into two main schools. One main school says it's Brahman who is ignorant, because they argue that the jiva can't be ignorant because ignorance is the root problem, and the jiva arises out of ignorance, therefore it must be Brahman who is ignorant. And the other side said, no, it's the jiva who is ignorant, but then they got in so many arguments. Bhagavan has simplified everything. Bhagavan said the root problem isn't ignorance, the root problem is who is ignorant, who we are, this ego is. So the ego is the root problem. So Bhagavan has simplified and clarified, removed so many confusions that existed in the older Advaitic texts. So Bhagavan has given us the Amrita. The Advaita philosophy is the Amrita of the whole of the Vedas. When the ocean of the Vedas are churned, what comes out is Advaita. When the ocean of Advaita is churned, what comes out is Bhagavan's teachings.
Anybody have a question? Go ahead. Hello, Michael. Can you hear me? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, yes.
You can, yeah, go ahead. Okay. Michael, I have a question.
Yes.
When we say the word knowing, I think that implies daya or triad.
Sorry? Knowing implies?
Daya or triad.
Well, yeah, it depends what we're knowing. Knowing ourselves, if we talk about knowing ourselves, since we are not an object, knowing ourselves, it doesn't involve a triad. Because the knowing, when we talk about knowing ourselves, the knowing is simply awareness, which is our real nature. So in self-knowledge, self-awareness, that which is aware, that of which it is aware, and it's being aware of it are all one and the same thing. Because its very nature is self-awareness. But when we talk about knowing anything other than ourselves, then you've got the triad, the daya. You've got ourself as the knower, the ego as the knower, the subject. You've got the things known, the object. And you've got the ego knowing those things. So there we've got the triad. So the triad applies to objective knowledge, that is knowledge of things other than oneself. Knowledge of oneself is beyond the triad, because there is only one thing there. That which knows, that which is known, and the knowing of that thing is all one and the same thing.
Okay. Then to me, as a person who is still ignorant, I understand knowing here, knowing other things than we are as ourselves, is actually not fun, because what is the special thing that we know ourselves, while knowing other things seems to be more beneficial.
Knowing other things is more beneficial?
Yes, to me as an ignorant person.
Because the ego can survive only by knowing things other than itself. Bhagavan says in verse 25, he says, Uළුļļadu Nāṛpadu, Uළුļļadu Nāṛpadu, Uළුvitu Uළුpatum, Uළුvaccapayahande. That is, Tedinal open critical. That is, what that means is, the ego is a formless phantom, he says. But it comes into existence, Uළුpati means grasping form. Grasping form means, if it's a formless phantom, how can something that is formless grasp anything? It hasn't got any hands or legs or hands or anything to grasp with. We grasp in our awareness. So what Bhagavan implies by Uළුpati is being aware of things other than ourselves. So by being aware of things other than ourselves, we come into existence as this ego. By being aware of things other than ourselves, we stand with this ego. By Uළුpati Undu, that means grasping and feeding on things. So by the being aware of things other than ourselves is the food that nourishes this ego. So there's Uළුpati Undu Mika Ongam, it flourishes abundantly. So as this ego, definitely we need to know things other than ourselves. But unfortunately, knowing things other than ourselves is very tiring. So every 16 hours or so, we get tired of knowing other things. We can't continue knowing other things. Though we've got so many desires to know other things, we reach a point where we're so exhausted, we subside into sleep. When the ego subsides, we don't know anything. But we don't cease to exist in sleep, do we? So we don't actually need to know anything other than ourselves to exist. We need to know things other than ourselves to exist as this ego. But we don't need things other than ourselves to exist as we really are. As you say, it is because of our ignorance that this ignorance is, the ego itself is ignorance. The very nature of the ego is ignorance. Because what is the ego? It is nothing but the wrong self-awareness, the erroneous self-awareness, I am this body. Pure self-awareness is aware of itself only as I am, not as I am this or that. But the ego is always aware of itself as I am this or that. I am this body, I'm a person called Michael, I am sitting here in London, talking to people, to you who are sitting there in Houston. Everything, it's all an erroneous awareness of myself. Instead of being aware of myself just as I am, I'm aware of myself as I am Michael, I am this body. I am so many years old, I am here, not there, all these things. So the ego itself is ignorance. And to maintain its ignorance, it needs to be aware of other things. And Bhagavan said, being aware of other things, ayalai, aṟivudu, aṟiyāmai. Being aware of anything other than ourselves is ignorance, Bhagavan says.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
But though we can say this and understand it at the surface level of our mind, none of us really understand it. If we were really convinced by what Bhagavan said, our attention would turn within and we would merge back into the source. Why we are still clinging to things other than ourselves? Because we don't yet fully understand what Bhagavan has said. Why don't we understand it? Because we don't really want to understand it. We still think we get happiness from the things of the world. We still think that knowing things of the world is real knowledge. Supposing in your dream last night, you studied a very interesting book, and you woke up thinking, oh, I've learned so much, and then suddenly you remember, oh, it was only a dream. All that I read in that history book or that science book, it was all a dream. So it may not be, it's all just a figment of my imagination. It's not real knowledge. What you learn in a dream is not knowledge. According to Bhagavan, our present state is just a dream. So all that we know now is not real knowledge, it's only ignorance according to Bhagavan.
So Michael, what would come first? The detachment and the desire to know self, or the self-realization, and then as a result, all the other things will happen?
So you're asking which comes first, the knowledge or the love to have the knowledge, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, according to Bhagavan, Bhakti is the mother of jnana. So without love, why are we all sitting here talking about this subject? We could be doing so many other things. It's a Saturday, well, for you it's a Saturday morning, for me it's a Saturday afternoon. We could be watching football, we could be going to the pub and drinking, we could be doing so many things people spend their weekends doing. They may go on a short holiday, a skiing holiday or something, so many things we could be doing. Why do we choose to be sitting here talking about this subject? Bhagavan has put a seed of interest on this subject in our heart. He has sown that seed. And now we find this subject more and more fascinating. We keep on being drawn back to it. Though we know this is a suicide mission. Studying and practicing Bhagavan teaching, we are on a suicide mission. We're like a moth flying round a flame. Sooner or later we're going to get too close to a flame and we're going to get burned. And we know that. But still we can't leave this flame. Somehow it's attracted us and we can't leave it. So Bhagavan had put the seed of love in our heart. And he is never going to cheat us. He himself prayed to Arunachala, Nesamil Enakun, to me who had no love, Unase Kartane, Mosanchayada Arunachala, to me who had no love for you, you planted that, you gave me that little bit of desire for you. Do not cheat me. Though Bhagavan said that as a prayer, I take that as an assurance. Having once put the seed of love in our heart, having once kindled that interest in our heart, we may not be sincerely following what Bhagavan has taught us. We may not yet have enough love. But when Bhagavan is such a gardener, when he sows a seed, he will water it and nurture it, and he will make sure that seed grows into a beautiful flowering plant. We may not be ready to flower yet, but we've been tended by the best gardener in the world. And we're sure that he will give us the water, he will give us the nourishment, he will give us all the favourable circumstances. And if the winter comes, he'll take us into the greenhouse to keep us, to protect us from the cold. He'll do all that is necessary to ensure that one day we'll be ready to flower.
Keva's question also reminded me of Carl Jung, the famous psychologist. And
sorry, I can't hear you very clearly.
So the Keva's question, the earlier question, reminded me of an incident related to Carl Jung. Apparently, somebody asked, "Why don't you go and see Bhagavan? I mean, you seem to be really impressed." Something to that effect, and then Carl Jung apparently responded that he's actually afraid of being in a permanent bliss at all times. You heard about this, and what are your comments on that?
Yeah. I think he didn't actually say he was afraid. I think that was what people inferred. What he said apparently to Dr. Mees, who wanted to take him to Bhagavan. He said, I saw all of India in the eyes of a boy in a bus stand. Standing on the street side, I saw the depth of India in the eyes of that boy. There's no need for me to see anything more.
Okay.
From which Dr. Mees inferred that he was afraid to see Bhagavan because he had built up his whole life work was based on his research on the mind. But Bhagavan says if you research the mind correctly by turning within to see what is this I, you will find there's no such thing as mind at all. So the whole of Jung's, all his life work, all his theories and everything, would all amount to nothing if he were to accept Bhagavan's teachings. So, like all of us, he was afraid to let go. We can laugh at him, but are we any better? We may be flying around the flame, but we're very careful not to get too close to the flame. Aren't we? We still are not ready to take the plunge and sacrifice ourselves in that flame, in that deepam.
We are holding it.
Hmm?
We are the problem. We are holding it.
Yes.
Michael, I've got another question. Now it is said that the real self actually knows itself, or aware of itself only. It knows nothing else. In that case, on one hand, if the real self is only aware of itself, on the other hand, we know that it says in the Holy Book, in the scriptures of the major religions.
Sorry, I didn't catch that last bit. We know what?
We know that it is mentioned in the major religion Holy Book of scriptures, the concept of personal God, where God creates, sustains the world, and then dissolves the world.
Yes.
That implies an act of doing something, while the self is actually only not doing, it's only being. So how do you reconcile that two seemingly contradictory statements?
Bhagavan has explained it in taṉṇai, in Who Am I? He said, just like in the mere presence of the sun, so many things happen on earth. Water evaporates, people do all their activities. All the life on this planet occurs because of the presence of the sun. If we were further away from the sun, there would be no life on this planet. But what is the sun doing? It's just being there as it is. But one uses that as an analogy. By the mere presence of God, all these things are happening. But God is not affected by them at all. And God is generally said to be all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-loving. To start with all-knowing, what Bhagavan says about omniscience, Sarvajñatvam, it's called in Sanskrit. What Bhagavan says is, God does know everything, but everything he knows is only one thing, that is himself, because there's nothing other than himself for him to know. From our perspective, it seems God knows everything, but from God's perspective, there is nothing other than himself for him to know. And likewise, he's all powerful, he can do anything. But actually God can't do anything, because his nature is being, not doing. Doing is an illusion that occurs when the ego arises. God doesn't do anything. But what Sadhguru gave a very nice analogy. Bhagavan has said that because there were some of Bhagavan's disciples who wanted power, who wanted Shakti and Siddhis, and Kabirant and his followers, they thought if they could do mantra japa, and they could get all powers and Siddhis, they could drive the British out of India, they could establish dharma in the world. They had so many big plans. Bhagavan said, where does real power lie? Real power, Shakti, is nothing but Shanti. Sadhguru gave and Bhagavan wrote a small verse to that effect. And Sadhguru gave a very nice analogy. Which requires more power? If you've got a big dam, it's holding so much water there. But so much power is required for that dam to hold all the water. If you breach the dam and allow water to leak out of the dam, that's actually a reduction in power. As soon as you start doing anything, power is reduced. The supreme power is just being. So which requires more power, more strength, for the dam to hold the water, or for the dam to crack and let the water leak out? Holding the water is the greatest power. A weak dam will sooner or later crack and crumble, and all the water will escape. Only a very strong dam can hold all the water there. So the greatest power is only peace, just being. So in that sense, God is all powerful, because he never rises to do anything, he just is as he is. And why is God all loving? Because he loves himself, and in his view where nothing other than himself exists. So whatever else, in our view, we seem to exist, there seem to be so many of us, so it seems to us that Bhagavan loves all of us. Bhagavan does love all of us, but not as the people we take ourselves to be. What he loves is what we really are, which is himself. So his love is what manifests as grace and what draws us back to ourselves. Grace is Maya is the power that draws our mind outwards, away towards the world. Grace is the same power but working in the opposite direction, drawing us back to ourselves. Maya is just a distortion of grace. Grace is the love we have for ourselves. That love we have for ourselves, because we see ourselves as many, we have love for so many other things. And well, some things we like and some things we dislike. The things which we think will give us happiness we like. The things which we think will deprive us of happiness or make us unhappy, we dislike. So but all those things that we both like and dislike, they're nothing but ourselves. So all dualities come into being only when we rise at this ego and see multiplicity. Then knowledge and ignorance, likes and dislikes, happiness, misery, life and death, existence and non-existence, all these come into existence only when we rise as an ego. So what is the solution? Getting rid of this ego. How to get rid of this ego? The ego rises by knowing things other than itself. If it tries to know itself, it subsides and disappears. Very, very simple philosophy Bhagavan has given us. But he didn't give it to us just to be a philosophy. He gave it to us to, we have to test it ourselves. It's a science. In science, the scientists aren't merely satisfied with the theories, they want to test the theories and see whether they actually work. So Bhagavan has given us the theory. It's for us to test it, to see whether it's actually true what Bhagavan is telling us. Bhagavan doesn't say just believe me. He says, he gives us good reasons why we should believe him, but he says don't be satisfied with mere belief. You have to investigate and find out for yourself. So in a way, Bhagavan is the very opposite of religion. Because in religions we're asked to believe things. Bhagavan asks us to question everything. Even the most fundamental things. What's our most fundamental belief? Well, obviously I believe I'm Michael. That's my most fundamental belief. Even that belief Bhagavan asks us to question.
Okay, if God's simply a being and not doing, so what is the use of the prayer?
What is prayer? Prayer is, what do we pray for? We pray for the things we like, don't we? So prayer is nothing but a focusing of our desire. Most people who pray, they pray for worldly things. They pray to get a better job, they pray to pass their exam, they pray for a happy life for their family, for their children, all these things. We pray for so many things. We see suffering and we pray that there shouldn't be suffering, all these things. But all these prayers are directed, though we are asking God for these things, what our desire is not for God. God is just a means to an end. If I pray to God, oh God, please help me to pass my exam, who do I love? Do I love God or do I love the exam? God is just a means. He's not the end. But if we pray to God for God himself, not for anything we can gain from God, but just for the love of God himself, such prayer is redirecting our mind away from other things towards God. But by practicing love towards God, at first we take God to be something other than ourselves. But when our mind is purified by practicing love to God, we slowly come to understand God alone exists. Who am I apart from God? So to know God, we have to find God in ourselves. So we have to turn our attention within. So our love gets directed to turn within. But when we begin to turn within, we find we have so many desires to jump outwards, to attend to other things. So if we pray to Bhagavan for the love to turn within, what we are doing, we are focusing we are channeling our love. Rather than trying to achieve anything in the external world, we are trying to know ourselves. We are trying to develop that love to know ourselves. So that is beneficial for us. God doesn't need our prayers. He doesn't need us to tell him what we need. He knows better than us what we need, what is good for us. We pray to God for so many things, but God doesn't grant all our prayers because he knows what we're asking for is not in our best interest. But if we pray to him for love, that he will give in abundance, because that's his very purpose. He wants nothing. Bhagavan is very, very selfish. He wants us only to love him. He wants all our love. He doesn't want to share our love for him with our love for ourselves as an ego. He wants our whole undivided love.
Does it mean that God actually does not hear our prayers?
so long as we take ourselves to be a person, we take God to be a person. Now, you just asked me a question, didn't you? You think there's someone called Michael who's hearing your question and giving you an answer. But supposing in a dream you were to ask someone, you would also get an answer. While you're dreaming, you believe there's a person there who is answering your question. So in your dream you want to go to the shop but you've forgotten which direction. You ask someone and they tell you. You think the person you've asked who's giving you the directions to the shop, but they're actually aware of your question, so long as you're dreaming. But when you wake up, you know that the person who you asked, who you asked that question was just your own figment of your imagination. So just like you believe Michael is hearing your question, it's equally true, but God is hearing our prayers. That is, so long as we rise as this ego and experience ourselves as his body, in effect the world is real and God is real as someone other than ourselves and other than the world. But when we wake up from this dream, we will know that neither the world nor God as another were real. But God is real, not as something other than ourselves, but as our own self, our own reality.
So at the end of it, it's the power of our attention to objects outside ourselves that's directing us outside, versus if you turn that power of attention inside.
Yes.
So I think
Sadhu said a very nice thing. He wrote in Patha Sri Ramana. Attention itself is grace. Whatever we give attention to, that thing is strengthened. Supposing you have a fear. Some people have a fear, say, people have all sorts of fears. Some fears are rational, some fears are irrational. Supposing you have an irrational fear of spiders. You're terrified of spiders. So every time you come in a room, you look around to see if there are spiders there. The more you think about spiders, the more that fear of spiders is being strengthened because of your attention to it. If you want to get rid of that fear of spiders, you have to just stop thinking about spiders. Stop thinking that spiders are dangerous, that spiders are going to do you any harm. So the less attention we give to something, the less strong it is. The more attention we give to something, the more strong it is. But Bhagavan has said about desire, the nature of desire is that before something is attained, even a mountain, even a molehill will appear like Mount Meru. But once it's attained, even Mount Meru will appear like a molehill. If we are poor, having $100 seems to us, if someone gives us $100, we're very, very happy. There's so many things we can do with $100. It will feed us for a couple of days, it will do this, it will do that. So for us, being very poor, $100 is a big deal. But if we are a billionaire, we're not satisfied with the billions we've got. We want more billions. But the billions, we know the billions are not making us happy. We want something more than this. So when something is desired, it appears very big in our view. When it's achieved, it's no longer a big deal.
So
and we want something more instead. So it's all a play of attention. If we would stop thinking that $100 is going to make us happy, even a poor man can be indifferent to whether money comes or goes. It doesn't matter. Once Kaviragata said to Bhagavan, it seems to me that for just 3 rupees we can live for a whole month. Bhagavan replied, we can live without the body, why then 3 rupees?
So Michael, I came across this in the book Happiness of Being. So
yes.
In that, after you talk about the attention, you say that, so at the end of it, the power of attention is actually, we are the power of attention. or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
to that
Well,
effect. Could you
well,
elaborate?
yeah. Our real nature is awareness. What is attention? It is simply a focusing or a directing of our awareness towards something. Supposing we're reading a very interesting book or watching a very exciting film. We're not aware of what's going on around because we're so interested in what we're attending to. So there are so many things going on around. It may be a bit cold, it may be a bit hot, we may be sitting in a comfortable chair, an uncomfortable chair. We don't notice all those things because we're so interested in the book we're reading. So though the other things that are there, they don't impinge on our awareness until we attend to them. When our whole attention is absorbed in reading that book, we don't notice the other things. So what attention is, it's a focusing of our awareness. So awareness is our real nature. Awareness is the supreme power, Chit Shakti. It is how this whole world is created. Because we see the world, because we see it, it seems to exist. So our seeing itself is the creation. Drishti Shrishti. That's what Bhagavan taught us. Drishti Shrishti Vada. The whole world is created by our seeing it. How the world in a dream exists. Who created the world in a dream? The one who sees it. By merely seeing that dream world, we create it. So the dream world doesn't exist apart from our perception of it. So our seeing it, our attending to it, that is what brings it into existence. So attention is the supreme power. But we squander this supreme power by letting it go outwards. That is like letting a dam crack. When the dam cracks, the water starts flowing out. And the more water flows out, the more it makes the crack wider and more water follows. So we've got to patch up this crack now. How to patch up the crack and put all the water back in the dam? Very, very simple. We simply turn our attention back to ourselves. If we had loved to turn our attention back to ourselves, we could annihilate the ego here and now. So why we're still all here, why we haven't surrendered our ego to Bhagavan, why we haven't rooted it out, why we haven't annihilated it, because we don't yet want to. We want to continue allowing our attention to go outwards.
Well, I think
So the choice is ours.
Who is the one that is allowing the attention to go outwards?
that's right. That's exactly
Sorry?
right.
Who is making this choice to allow the attention to go outwards? Is it awareness that's doing it, or like
You are making the choice, aren't you? So who are you?
Who's making the choice?
The one who chooses to allow its attention, whose attention is going outwards? It's the ego's attention. Brahman never attends to anything other than itself, does it? Atma-swarupa is never aware of anything other than itself. It's when we rise as this ego that we become aware of other things. So it's only at this ego that we allow our attention to go outwards. It's only at this ego that we choose to allow our attention to go outwards.
So Brahman, it seems like Brahman wants to rise as this ego.
Why would Brahman ever want that?
Well, because that's what's happening. And how can something happen that Brahman doesn't want?
Who said Brahman has risen as an ego? It's the ego that rises as an ego. If this ego investigates itself, it will see it's Brahman and that it has never risen. When people ask Bhagavan how this ego arose, how Maya came into existence, Bhagavan would never answer that question how. He would say, first see whether it's actually risen, and then come back and ask me. If you can find this ego, you bring it to me and then we can find out how it came into existence. But first find it for me.
But see, Brahman never demands my attention. Always the ego is demanding my attention. Like Brahman, if it's...
Who are you? Are you ego or Brahman?
ego.
Don't know it.
Right. So you say ego is demanding your attention. That means you are demanding your attention. Because you as ego can survive only by attending to things other than yourself, you are constantly attending to things other than yourself. So it's up to you as ego. Do you want to continue suffering? Because Brahman isn't suffering. Brahman has no problem. It's you who have a problem.
So Michael, follow up on that question from Deepthi. So far, I have been helplessly in the webs of ego till I realized that it was ego. You follow me? I was born, I didn't know that there was a separate thing, not separate, but there is the Brahman, and then there was the ego. I didn't know. I was helplessly led in this life through the thought process without even knowing that thought itself was the culprit in the first place.
Yes, okay.
And then circumstances, probably divinely ordained, led me to the understanding that there is this thought, which in itself was the culprit. Now, so to her question, I think a lot of it is helplessness. I mean, I didn't even know that there was something called ego. I just was going through life till a point arose.
You may not have used the word ego, but you were aware. Sorry, what is your name?
Ram.
Ram. You were aware from pretty early on, I am Ram. Even before you knew language, you were aware of a body as yourself, weren't you? You didn't know that body was called Ram, but you were aware of that body. Ever since you were born, you've been aware of yourself as this body.
I thought I was the body.
Yes, yes. Who thought that? That was the ego. When you say, I thought I was the body, that I is the ego. The I that thinks I am this body, that is the ego. So we're all very well aware of the ego. We're also aware, now we're aware of ourselves as I am this body. In sleep we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, but it just happens to be another body, not this body. In dream we are not aware of ourselves as anybody at all, but we are aware, I slept. When we wake up we know very clearly we slept, but we were in a state in which we weren't aware of anything. We're aware that we were in such a state. So it has to be pointed out to us because because we are constantly looking outwards, we miss the obvious truth. So so our own real self appears outwardly in the form of Guru as Bhagavan and points out all this to us. Now it's been pointed out to us, now we understand we have a choice. We either continue in our wrong ways, going outwards, or we can turn within. And the solution to all our problems is to turn within. But because we are still, because of the density of our desires, our mind is still clouded. We see a glimmer of light in Bhagavan's teachings, but we are not fully convinced. We may be at the superficial intellectual level, we may be convinced by Bhagavan's teachings. Yes, it all makes sense, it's all very plausible. But deep down, we are still, the delusion is still very much there, very thick and dense. So how to get rid of that basic ignorance, which is the very nature of the ego? The nature of ignorance is darkness. We need light. Where to find the light? What is the light which illumines the mind and enables it to see all this world? It is only the self-awareness, our real nature. That is the original light. So by turning our attention back within, we are turning our eyes towards the light, so to speak. And the more we turn our eyes towards the light, eyes mean not our physical eye, but our ahakan, the inner eye, Tiramiya handanai dinama ahakankan, Bhagavan says. Turning within, daily or constantly see yourself with the inner eye. The inner eye is attention. So turning our attention within, the more we turn our attention within, the more we're bathing ourselves in light. That is the real Ganga Snana, what we're bathing in the Ganga of self-awareness. So if you want to have a bath in the Ganga, you don't have to go away to back to India. You can then, here and now, we can each have a bath in the real Ganga, which is the Ganga of self-awareness, by turning our attention within. The more we bathe in that Ganga of self-awareness, the more we're bathing in light. And the more we bathe in light, the more our heart will be clarified and purified. And the more it's clarified and purified, the more clear and convincing Bhagavan's teachings will become. And as a result of that, we get viveka. And viveka leads to vairagya and to bhakti. Vairagya means the freedom from desire to attend to other things. Bhakti means the love to attend to ourselves. So it's a snowballing process. So long as the snow is sitting on a mountainside, nothing's disturbing it. But when a small pebble falls from some ice cracks a rock up on the top of the mountain, and a pebble starts rolling down, it picks up snow. And the more it goes, it picks up more and more and more snow, it gets faster and faster. And in the end it may become a big avalanche. It's like that. So Bhagavan has made that small stone fall, and it's now rolling down the hillside picking up snow. So the more we put what Bhagavan taught us into practice, the quicker we will be swept away by love for him.
Michael, totally on the same page as you on that one. Now, one comment and the question. Comment is, as you rightly said, once we know that that we are not the body, we are not the ego, we are the Brahman, then we have a choice which way to go. Absolutely on the same page on that one. The world does distract, and hopefully that distraction comes to an end, because the world always tries to direct me. When I say world, very people close to me, not even friends, I'm talking about people very close, like wife and such, where the focus tends to bring back to the world more and more, and that's a distraction. That's the comment. I know that that's more rhetorical. I'm not expecting an answer there, but that's a challenge. Second is, the question really is, there is a definite end to the thoughts, isn't it? As the snowball avalanche gains momentum, the thoughts definitely will come to an end one day, correct?
What is the first thought?
Theoretically, yeah.
Until the first thought to rise is going to be the last thought to subside. The first thought to rise is the ego. The thought, I am this. So there's no use in getting rid of thoughts is not the aim. Our aim is to get rid of the root of all thoughts. That's why Bhagavan says, what does it matter however many thoughts arise? Whatever thought may arise, to whom does it arise? Turn your attention back within. So thoughts are not our enemy. Our enemy is the ego, the thinker. So if thoughts were a problem, the whole world is a problem then, because according to Bhagavan, the whole world is nothing but thoughts. People say, I sat in meditation for 20 minutes with no thoughts. The I who was in meditation is a thought, the body that sat is a thought, the 20 minutes is a thought, the meditation is a thought. We never the only time we get away from thoughts is when we fall asleep. How do we get rid of thoughts in sleep? Simply by giving up the ego. So long as the ego is there, other thoughts will be there, because the ego cannot stand without other thoughts. Because the ego, the first thought the ego depends upon is this body. We need some body to be the ego is as Bhagavan said, the ego is the dehatma buddhi, the thought, I am this body. Ittanu Vainanam, he says in the beginning of that verse on the meaning of deeper, seeing deeper. So this body alone is I. That is the ego. So the body is a thought. So the ego is the first thought, but it can't rise without grasping other thoughts. So the problem is not thoughts, the problem is who is thinking the thoughts.
Michael, I have a question. But if we are pure awareness, and this is what we are, and if we are at the beginning, say a word, only aware of our awareness, how come our attention got so degenerate to actually now living in this world so confusing to all of us? I do not understand that. To me, it's like if my genes are 100% of specific race, and my wife is the same, and we have children, that child should be exactly of the same genes as what of us are. If I am Asian, my child will not come out white, right? Unless something happened, and then there would be a bunch of questions to ask. But in principle, we cannot. If something pure cannot generate into anything that is not pure. So I do not understand. So I'm missing a link here between what we originally are and what we are experiencing today in this room.
Okay, so I couldn't hear all of that very clearly. I don't quite understand what the question is. I heard little bits of it, but I didn't hear. Sorry.
My apologies. Yeah, Michael. Basically, what I'm saying is, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you better now.
What I'm saying is, if we are originally only pure awareness,
yes,
how come that purity? How come that pure awareness has degenerated into what we are experiencing today in this room, basically? Because something is, in my mind, if something is pure, 100% pure, it cannot, there is no way it can be anything other than just pureness and nothing else. So if my awareness is only focused on my awareness, which is what I really am, and nothing else, how come now I am experiencing something that we call outwards as opposed to inwards, and all of these things that don't occur?
So basically you're asking the old how question. The how question was the one question Bhagavan could never answer. Bhagavan had no answer for it. So in order to evade the answer, he would say, if you asked how it all has come, he would say, to whom has it come? It's come to me. So see who that me is. If you see who that me is, that me will disappear, and when the me is found to be non-existent, nothing will ever have appeared, and then the question doesn't arise. Asking how is the wrong question. In other words, why Bhagavan couldn't answer it? Because in his view, no ego had ever risen. It's only in our view that the ego has risen, and in our view that the ego is aware of all these other things. So it's we who have to answer the question. How did we rise as this ego? Well, for a start, let's have a look inside and see what is it that has risen. Who am I who has risen as this ego? If we look within and see what we really are, we'll see that we've never risen as an ego. There never was an ego, and therefore there never was any problem.
See, Umberto's question was how. How is a process question? But in being, there is no process. Nothing is happening. So that's why I think what one just says, just focus on your awareness, and then the question you won't arise. There is no process there. Right?
Well, any question how presupposes that something has happened. what is the first happening is the rising of the ego. Has the ego actually risen? We can find that out only by looking within and seeing who am I. When we look within and see who am I, we will see that the ego has never risen. There never was any ego. And therefore the how question is irrelevant.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. I mean, is it necessarily a problem that with pure awareness of a body and a mind? Is it necessarily a problem? Does it have to be a problem?
I think it is, because when you're saying, what's the problem? The problem is duality.
Is it a problem? We each have to say for ourselves.
I mean, we know.
All problems come only when? In waking and dream. In sleep, do you have any problem? In sleep, there's no problem. Problems arise only in waking. And there's no jiva in this or in any other world who has a problem-free life. Because every jiva takes itself to be a body. And body brings problems, disease, hunger, all these things. We cannot have a perfectly content life so long as we experience ourselves as a body. So yes, there is a problem. Being aware of anything other than ourselves is a problem, a big, big problem. We may not see it as a problem because we're focusing on all the little problems that come in its way. But the root problem is nothing but this, our seeing things other than ourselves. How we see things other than ourselves? By rising this ego. So let's look at ourselves to see what we ourselves really are. Then we'll get rid of the ego, and along with the ego we'll get rid of all its problems. We all know there's no living being that is free of problems. But still, which one of us is not seeking a problem-free life? We're all seeking a problem-free life, but we think, if I have more money, my life will be free of problems. If I have better health, my life will be free of problems. We're looking for the solutions outside. There is no solution outside. Because the very looking outside is itself the problem.
But no, now we're saying that if I look inside, there won't be any problem. So we're still seeking a solution to the problem, like saying that if I'm aware of myself, there won't be any problems. Yes.
Yes. That's what Bhagavan tells us. We've tried so many other ways to get rid of our problems. What Bhagavan says makes a lot of sense. So it's worth trying what he suggests and seeing whether we can get rid of our problems this way. Because everyone else who offers solutions to problems, they don't offer a complete solution. Because all solutions to problems are based on the assumption if you get rid of one problem, then you'll be okay. But we know very well, whatever problem we get rid of in life, some other problem will come in its way. So, what is the root of all problems is the ego. When Bhagavan points it out to us, it's so blindingly obvious that it's true. So since Bhagavan has pointed out what is blindingly obvious, but which all of us have missed, the solution he recommends is worth trying. Which doctor is to be believed? The doctor who cannot diagnose what's wrong with us, or the doctor who can diagnose what's wrong with us? We may have been searching for a remedy for our illness for so long, and we've been to so many doctors and they're scratching their heads and they can't work out what's wrong with us. Or they may tell us, oh, it's this or it's that, we've tried their treatment, it doesn't work. Finally we've come to a doctor who gives us a definite diagnosis. Your problem is that you've risen as this ego. And not only he gives a clear diagnosis, a clear and very convincing diagnosis, he also gives a logically sound solution. So when all the Bhagavan has taught us is so reasonable, more reasonable than we've heard from anyone else, it's certainly worth trying what is the solution he offers. It may seem difficult to us because we don't have so much love to turn within, but it's certainly worth putting our best into it, because we know we've been searching for solutions in other ways endlessly, and we've never found any solution anywhere else. So let's at least give this solution a good try.
Michael, I think it's not so much that we don't have love for it, it's more that we don't know how. Or we don't, obviously the question was, don't you know who you are? And obviously I have to say I know who I am, but then...
You don't know how to be aware of yourself.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Right, if that's what you're saying, when have you ever not been aware of yourself?
Right now I am not aware of myself.
You're not aware of yourself? Who is the one who says, I am not aware of myself? You're aware of the I, who says, I'm not aware of myself.
Well, I am saying I'm not aware of myself. I, who I take myself to be, this physical entity.
But you must be aware of I in order to say, I'm not aware of myself. Not only you're aware of I, you're also aware of the myself you're not aware of. So you're using these words, I am myself, and saying they're things, they refer to something you're not aware of. That's a bit confusing, isn't it?
Well, yes, it is, Michael. That's the whole problem. I'm
that is the nature of the ego. The ego is there. The ego is a confusion.
Yeah.
But one thing we are always aware of is ourselves. Awareness of other things comes and goes. But we are always aware of ourselves. The problem is, we overlook this self-awareness. Our self-awareness, but often you say the basic self-awareness is like the screen in a cinema. The screen is always there. All the 3 hours we sit in the cinema watching a film, what we're actually looking at is the screen. But we don't notice the screen at all because we're far more interested in the interesting pictures that are flashing across it.
Well, Michael, right now I'm looking at your image.
Yes. Now, Bhagavan has said, instead of overlooking the obvious, look at the obvious. Look straight at it. Look at yourself. Now we are always self-aware. We're negligently self-aware. Because we're more interested in being aware of other things, we neglect the basic self-awareness, which is the support for our awareness of everything else. So instead of being negligently self-aware, all Bhagavan asks us to do is to try to be attentively self-aware. It's not difficult. There's no difficulty at all. What can be easier than being attentively aware of oneself? It seems difficult because we want to be aware of other things. So long as we want to be aware of other things, we are dividing our attention, we're not giving our full attention to ourselves.
Michael, in the analogy of the movie, why we are more interested in the pictures, because the pictures are more interesting than the screen.
No, not that they're more interesting, that's all I can attend to. Like, Michael, I was just seeing you, the plant behind you, the wall behind you. I'm not able to see this. Although I know all there is to you is the screen. Like, obviously if I want to touch you, if I go up to you and try to touch you, it's the screen. But my attention cannot attend to the screen. Like, it doesn't have the capacity to.
The other thing I want to pile up on, Michael, before you...
Michael, we're all attacking you.
Before you answer is, that's how I was conditioned till I got to a point that there is more than this. That's how I was conditioned. I didn't know anything better. I was thinking that, attending to my thoughts, attending to my body, attending to my education, getting a good job, having a wife, kids, that's the meaning of this life, is how I was conditioned, and I was helpless because I didn't know anything better till there was a divine intervention. Till that point, if that divine intervention did not happen in my life, I wouldn't have known anything better. And also, the ego that we keep saying, isn't that created by God? there is no other thing other than God in this life. So who created this ego? It has to be God.
Well, according to Bhagavan, it's the ego who creates God. If you're talking about God as other than yourself, the ego, it is because you rise as an ego that God appears to be other than yourself. The reality of the ego and the reality of God are one and the same. As Bhagavan says in Upadesha, Irakum ekayal isa jivagal oru porole aba. That is, in their existing nature, God and soul are one substance. But when we rise as a soul, as an ego, we see God as other than ourselves. So the God as other than ourselves is created by our rising as the ego. The God as ourself, as our real nature, doesn't create anything, it just is. According to Bhagavan, everything is created simply by our seeing it. So because we're aware of ourselves as the ego, we have created the ego. We, the ego, have created the ego. Because we're aware of all these other things, we have created them. But coming back to the analogy of the screen, the pictures are always, to some extent, obscuring the screen, though we're always seeing the screen. So long as there are pictures on the screen, we're not seeing the screen as it is. But every analogy has its limitations. So we shouldn't stretch the analogy too far. One thing that we are always very, very clearly aware of, more clearly aware of than anything else, is ourself. Self-awareness is the very foundation of everything. Like when you ask that question, you say, I'm not seeing myself, I'm not aware of myself. How can I not be aware of itself? The very asking of the question, it proves that you're aware of yourself. So the self-awareness is so obvious. Apparently once in Bhagavan's presence, someone was asking similar questions to the questions you're asking. And Bhagavan was patiently trying to explain, but the person still wasn't getting it. But went on, so Bhagavan was keeping quiet, and finally Swami Natananda, who was sitting there, turned to him and said, what are you talking about? You're sitting there like a rock. Isn't it obvious to you? And Bhagavan said, Belle, he's got it. Then only it struck the person. Yes, I'm overlooking what is most obvious. So we are always aware of ourselves, but in all three states we're aware. What's the difference between waking, dream and sleep? In sleep we're aware of ourselves, and only ourselves. In waking and dream we're aware of ourselves and other things. So the self-awareness is the substratum. It's always there. There's never a moment when we're not aware of ourselves. But because of our interest in other things, we attend to other things. We need to become interested in ourselves, in knowing what we are. Not ourselves as a person, but ourselves as the mere self-awareness. That we need to become interested in. According to Bhagavan, this self-awareness, this simple self-awareness that we all experience all the time, is the supreme and only reality. Yathatamai Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Aṇḍṛi. That Atma-sarupam, the real nature of oneself, is just that self-awareness, which we are always aware of. Bhagavan said, there is nothing new to know. If jnana were a new knowledge, what comes will go. So there is not a single person who doesn't have jnana here and now. The problem is we've got the full jnana plus ajnana. We need to get rid of our ajnana. The ajnana comes with what? With the ego. By investigating the ego, we find the ego doesn't exist. When the ego ceases to exist, its ajnana will cease to exist along with it. So Bhagavan said, in this path, it's not a matter of learning anything, it's a matter of unlearning everything. There's nothing to gain, there's everything to lose. When we've lost everything, then we have gained what alone is real. Because everything is unreal. That's why Bhagavan said, the verses of Uڵḷadu are so beautiful. You understand Tamil?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. But in verse 26, Bhagavan says, if the ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If the ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. The ego itself is everything. Therefore, investigating what this ego is giving up everything.
Right.
I mean, we obviously don't understand it, but we
Not yet.
But
No, we understand it, but we
won't.
don't experience it. That's
Right.
what it is.
Yeah, we understand it superficially, but we are not fully convinced because our mind is still too clouded. How to purify the mind? Take a Ganga Snana, have a bath in the Ganga. The Ganga is not that river flowing in North India. The Ganga is in your own heart. The Ganga is the self-awareness that is shining in you now as I.
So am I shining
The
right
I
now,
that,
Michael?
that I say I'm not aware of.
making a lot of effort.
Michael. Michael.
Michael,
Yes?
can you just come here and give us this Ganga Snana?
Yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
Michael.
I'm in no better position than you. I'm in exactly the same position. I
That's
think myself
even scarier, Michael. That's even scarier. Yeah, it's making it worse.
we are all fellow travelers on this path. I'm no better than any of you. But it's just that we just have to constantly remind us, this is all Bhagavan has asked us to do. To turn within. See the light within your heart. That light will purify you, cleanse you, and transform you into itself. Because it is yourself.
Michael.
Yes?
Yes, Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, this will be my last questions for today.
Okay.
First is, can the body function without the ego? Second
Sorry?
question, can the body function without an ego?
So he's asking if the body can function without the ego.
Right, okay. Shall I answer that one first?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead, yeah.
Can the body function without the ego? Right.
Yes.
Last night when you were dreaming, you had a body. And that, because you took that body to be you, it was functioning very well. But then you left that body, didn't you? You, the ego, left that body in dream. Is it still functioning there?
Yes, it's still breathing.
The dream body, the body in your dream, I'm talking about now, but last night you had a dream.
Uh-huh.
In that dream you had a body which you took to be yourself. When you woke up, you left that body, didn't you?
Yes.
So now that body has no ego, because you've abandoned it. So is that body still functioning?
No.
No. The body cannot function without the ego. Because the body seems to exist only when we rise as the ego and say this body is I. You can try and prove me wrong by saying, but Bhagavan's body didn't have an ego. But in whose view was Bhagavan's body there, functioning? It was in the view of yourself, the ego. Bhagavan said, you take me to be this body. I don't experience myself with this body, I just experience myself as I am. So, because we take ourselves to be a body, we see Bhagavan as a body. And therefore we say, Bhagavan's body is functioning without an ego. But that is only in the view of our ego that is true. The truth is, when the ego leaves the body, there is no body, because what is the body? It's a projection of the ego. Just like in dream, Dream is a wonderful thing. As soon as you start dreaming, everything is ready-made. There's a body which you experience as yourself, and there's a world. All appears instantly, doesn't it? There's no gradual process of creation of your dream world. You rise as an ego, project a body, take it as yourself, project a world. It all happens instantaneously. When you, the ego, subside back into sleep or come to another dream, this present dream, that dream is left behind. The dream body and dream world all cease to exist. According to Bhagavan, your present body and present world is just a dream. When this dream comes to an end, if the ego is annihilated, that's the end of the story. If the ego isn't annihilated, you'll just start dreaming another dream. That is what is called reincarnation, rebirth, or whatever. The simple explanation for rebirth is that every life is just a dream. And so until we get rid of the root of all these dreams, until we get rid of the dreamer, namely the ego, these dreams will continue. One dream comes to an end, another dream starts. Because we know the ego has this wonderful power to project the body and the world, and to experience that body as I and that world as real. Since it's able to do so in dream, it will continue doing so until it itself is annihilated. So how to annihilate this ego? Nothing we can do can kill this ego. Bhagavan used to say trying to kill the ego is like trying to bury one's shadow. But if you're fed up with your shadow following you, you dig a deep pit, you see your shadow at the beginning of the bottom of the pit. So you happily start shoveling the dirt back in the pit. Your shadow will come up on top of the dirt, won't it? So every effort to get rid of the ego is like that. But instead of trying to get rid of the ego, look at the ego and see whether it actually exists. If you look at it and see whether it actually exists, you'll find there's no such thing. So long as we are worried about our shadow, looking at our shadow, it will follow us wherever we go. If we simply ignore the shadow, look at the sun, the shadow is no problem. The shadow is there only when we look at it. Why look at the shadow? Look at the sun. So if we look at ourselves, the ego will vanish. We don't have to get rid of it. We just have to turn our attention back within, and it will, as Bhagavan said, Tedinal otum pidicum. It's sought, it takes flight.
Kumar, just one more question, Kumar. A quick, simple question. Michael, sorry, before we let you leave you to go today, just one quick, simple question. Do all other sentient beings have ego?
Sorry?
Do all other sentient beings have ego?
Meaning other than humans?
Other than humans,
Okay.
like plants, animals.
Okay, in your dream, you see lots of people and lots of sentient beings. How many of them have egos?
I don't know.
In your dream, it's your dream.
One ego.
Hmm?
Only one ego, my ego.
Only one ego, yes. According to Bhagavan, there's only one ego.
Okay, thank you.
And once when Bhagavan was talking about this, someone asked, but there's so many of us sitting in the hall, which one of us is the one ego? Bhagavan said, you are that. And someone else said, Bhagavan, what about me? Bhagavan said, you are that. Which is the one ego? The one who sees this dream is the one ego. So go figure.